Hello and welcome to another episode of All Politics is Local. I'm your host, John Tian. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. For more information about the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems, feel free to visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. We have yet another great show planned for you tonight. With me in the studio is Kevin Tagliaferri. He's the chairman of the Bellingham DTC. And Kevin, welcome to All Politics is Local. Happy to have you on the show.
Thanks to be here. Thank you.
Kevin is the chairman of the resurrected Democratic Town Committee in Bellingham, and he's also running for the Democratic State Committee. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on in Bellingham, what you've been able to accomplish there, and then we'll talk about the Democratic State Committee a little bit.
Sure, John. Well, as we were speaking earlier, back when we first met at the Kennedy campaign headquarters, there was another person in the room that day at headquarters named Joyce Notine. And after the campaign, we were both puzzled as to why there was nothing going on in Bellingham for Democrats. So the two of us set out and were able to revive the Bellingham Democratic Town Committee. I'm very proud to say that I was a part of doing that. We've got membership now, and the important thing is that people have a place to go. Democrats in Bellingham have an outlet if they want to come and participate in the process and be good Democrats at the same time. So, we've been back in business now since 2013. We're going strong. We're trying to expand, and we have monthly meetings, first Wednesday of the month at the municipal building.
Okay.
7 o'clock. We publicize as much as we can. We have a website, bellinghamdems.org. And you can also get information on the Bellingham Bulletin or the Country Gazette. We publicize when our meetings are coming up, and they're open to any town Democrats or even independents if they want to come. That's
Great. How many members do you have on the committee now?
Officially, we have about 13. That tends to, vary. People have busy lives, and so there's not always a big contingent at each of our meetings. But
right.
We've got our caucus is coming up in March, and that's usually an attention getter, especially in an election year. So I would expect that when we gather for our caucus in March to choose our delegates to the state convention in June, that we'll have some extra company, and maybe a few more members will show up that day.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So do you have any kind of like a emeritus membership or anything like that? What are your bylaws all about? Did you actually adopt bylaws, or do you just go with the ones that the state committee sets forth?
We pretty much went with the ones that the state committee had, and we inherited still some people that were on the Democratic committee before we revived it, and they still wanted to be a part of it.
Okay.
And that was great. So we've got some people on there that have been on the town committee for over 20 years, and they're allowed to automatically be members.
Right, so they don't have to run for the office.
Correct.
You're going to be on the ballot then this March 1st to be both on the Democratic Town Committee in Bellingham, and your name will be on the ballot for the Democratic State Committee, correct?
That's true. I'll be on the ballot twice, and boy, if I don't win at least one of them, it's going to be a little embarrassing.
A little kick in the teeth, huh? So as far as the state committee is concerned, let's talk a little bit about that. What is the state committee all about, and specifically, why do you want to be a state committee member?
The state committee is sometimes difficult to explain to people, especially when I say that I'm on the ballot and I'm running. I need to explain that I'm not running as a representative or a councilman or your traditional type of election. That the state committee is a group of Democrats, I would estimate between 500 and 600 of them statewide, that are either elected on the ballot or elected by the committee, or emeritus, as you said, longstanding members of the Democratic Party or sitting politicians already in office. So that's the makeup of the state committee. They meet as a group in different areas of the state at least 4 times a year. Yeah. But I think the most important thing to remember about the state committee is that they are the ones responsible for developing the Democratic Party's platform. Okay. And that is what all the delegates vote on when they go to convention. And so when you look back and you're talking about Massachusetts health insurance law,
right,
marriage equality, family leave, those type of things come out of the Democratic State Committee. They're put on as a plank for the Democratic Party platform. The party adopts it at the convention. The candidates adopt it when they run for office. And so
And so that's where these things come from.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's important for those reasons, but for other reasons as well. I mean, there's as a member of the state committee, for instance, you have a nice a nice map here of what the Senate district would look like for myself if I were to win this election. And I would want to work with all these towns to see that they are, for instance, developing a Democratic committee. Some of the towns don't have them.
Right.
Or just, working with them on other ideas to increase Democratic awareness and, again, give people a place to go if they want to be involved in the Democratic Party.
Okay. So what kind of things are you working on with the Bellingham Democratic Town Committee? You mentioned that you have monthly meetings. Do you do other things throughout the year? I know that I've attended a couple of fundraisers that you've held at various establishments over the last couple of years.
Yeah, we have our annual fundraiser. It's called the Summer Kickoff, and we pick a business somewhere in Bellingham, and it's held in June, just when the weather is starting to get nice, and we just try to kick off the summer, and we invite local, state office holders and other activists to come and just casually hang out and get ready for the summer, which is a slow time usually.
Right.
But it's still a good way to connect with people before you go off on vacation.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we've been trying to work on voter registration. Especially we're trying to work with the Young Democrats. They're an organization in the state, and they help to go into the schools and encourage them or show them how to maybe develop a Democratic Party club, meeting after school. And,
Yep.
and young people are just very idealistic and energetic and really very important to the party. And if we can get them interested, then I think that's great for the whole party.
Oh, certainly, yeah. Young people are the future of the party, so it's vital that we get them involved. Things like the college Dems and even in high school.
Right.
I know that we've done some work here in the Milford Democratic Town Committee. We've done some work here with the National Honor Society at our high school to get them out and do voter registration drives and things like that. They have the same kind of they're within the National Honor Society. They have the civic duty kind of obligations that they have to fulfill. Also, it looks good on a college application if you've been out doing things like that. So.
Well, that's interesting you mention that, because as my committee is still kind of getting their sea legs in a way, it's nice to talk to people from other town committees and what are you doing? And maybe that's something I can bring back to my membership, and we can try to implement those things. So
yeah, sure.
we're always looking for new ideas.
Yeah,
so.
we get a copy of the registered voter database in town. We print it and keep it in a binder. We put it on the table, and when we staff the table, we make sure that there's a couple of adults there, but mostly we staff the table with the volunteers from the National Honor Society. It has to be a nonpartisan. We can't register only Democrats or anything like that.
Exactly,
so
right.
Anybody that wants to register, if someone walks up to the booth and says, "Yes, I'm interested in registering to vote," first we'll check the book. We'll say, are you already registered? What does the book say about you? Are you registered at such and such address or anything like that?
Right.
If their address has changed, or if for any reason they need to register, we take their information, make sure that the form is complete, and turn them all in. We can't just weed through them and say, let's only get the Democrats here. We have to be very nonpartisan about it.
And speaking of that, John, when you are giving them instructions, because it's been reported recently that tens of thousands of people have accidentally enrolled in the American Independent Party, which is on the voter registration card, thinking that they're registering as an independent,
Right.
but they're not.
But
they're
they're not.
registering with a party,
Right.
and then they can't vote in either the Republican or the Democratic primaries.
Right, because as far as the primaries are concerned, you can only vote. If I'm a registered Democrat, I can only vote in the Democratic primary.
Correct.
However, if I was unenrolled, which is a separate category, if I'm unenrolled here in Massachusetts, I can vote in either party.
Exactly.
I can go into the voting booth and request a ballot from either party on primary day.
That's
So
right.
that's interesting.
And so people
point
that-
about Massachusetts politics, yeah.
People that really consider themselves independent and want to vote that way should really
take care.
should really, they should register as unenrolled.
Unenrolled.
That's the
yes.
lesson.
You have
Some
to-
people are going to learn the hard way, I'm afraid, on March 1st.
You have to be very careful
yeah.
about what you're doing there with your registration. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some national politics. That's always a fun topic for me. I really love politics. I eat it and breathe it wholesale. But before we get into that, I also wanted to say, yes, we met at the Kennedy campaign headquarters at the Home National Bank that time. But since that time, you and Joyce and I and my daughter, we've all seen each other at another venue in town that's one of my favorite venues, Drinking Liberally, which meets on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month at the Turtle Tavern right here in Milford, 72 Main Street.
The Turtle Tavern. I've grown accustomed to the Turtle Tavern, I must say.
Yep. The Turtle's a nice place, the beer is cold, the food is good, and the conversation is always lively at our table.
And the wait staff is unbelievable.
Oh, they're tremendous, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really do love us. From the putting welcome liberals onto the specials board to everything else that they do for us. Separate checks for everybody. They managed it quite well. They know all of our names. They know us by name now. They know what your typical drink order is. They're really attuned to us. They really do a great job for us.
They do.
So,
I look forward to going there every other week.
So for anybody that's watching tonight that wants to get out and talk politics, maybe sometimes the spouse doesn't want to hear about politics, and you want to get out and talk politics with somebody. Second and fourth Wednesday every month, Drinking Liberally at the Turtle Tavern. We have a great time. We're a nonpartisan group. We do not turn anyone away, but be prepared. We are liberals. So we don't turn anybody away, and we won't turn you away based on your ideology. So we do have a really fun time. What I think is actually even better about the whole timing of the thing is that this show, All Politics is Local, airs on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. So sometimes we're actually able to put my show onto the big screen TV at the Turtle, and depending on what the episode is, if people want to watch, they can do so.
Nice.
So yeah,
Well, I'll make sure I get there early next time to get
there
a
you
good
go.
seat.
Get there by 7 o'clock so we can put All Politics is Local on. And for those of my viewers or those of people who are watching this on YouTube, you may not be in the Milford area. If you're interested in going to Drinking Liberally, you can go to livingliberally.org and learn more about all the different Liberally organizations. They have Reading Liberally and Screening Liberally and Praying Liberally. They've got all manner of different, Laughing Liberally is a comedy troupe that goes around the country doing political humor.
And it's nationwide.
It's worldwide, actually, yeah. Drinking Liberally is by far the most popular of the chapters. I believe there's almost 400 chapters worldwide. And I heard that there was one in Providence at, I can't remember the name of the bar now, something the Patriot, something about patriotism. I can't remember what, but apparently the chapter has become more abundant, hasn't met in a while. Which is a shame. The bar was named perfectly for a Drinking Liberally chapter. But absolutely, go to livingliberally.org and check out for your local area to see where a chapter might meet.
Okay. Living liberally.
Yep. Yeah, so on to national politics. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the presidential race. A lot of stuff happening these days. On the Democratic side, we have Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. I know that you and I were talking the other day about some of your concerns. Where Sanders was concerned, you were concerned a little bit about his age. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Hillary and Bernie right now.
Yeah, sure. I think like a lot of Democrats, I've got a great choice to make, and it's very difficult.
Sure.
I mean, these are two fantastic, qualified candidates. Hillary, she's got 8 years as First Lady, and that's not,
It's
an
not
easy
inconsiderable.
job.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
She's a United States Senator, Secretary of State. She's developed all these kind of relationships, which I would hope would help her to achieve a lot of the goals that she wants to achieve. But eminently qualified. Bernie Sanders, my goodness, he is defining, I think, for a whole generation what practical socialism means.
Right.
This is not our father's socialism, John.
Right.
The word that scared people.
Right.
This is a different kind of socialism that he's talking about.
Well,
and
what I think when I think of socialism, I think of things like here in the United States. I think of things like fire protection, police protection, roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, all the different things that our government provides for us. To a certain extent, the United States already is a socialist country. I want to put up a bumper sticker. I'm thinking of resurrecting my Zazzle store, which is a place where I can do some graphic artwork and put it on bumper stickers. And you know, there's people out there that say they hate socialism and they substitute the O in socialism with Obama's symbol.
Right.
I want to create one that says, hate socialism, get off our roads. Because, I mean, honestly,
Right.
you know, what paid for those roads?
Right.
You know, I've seen different things.
Steal your parents' Social Security checks before they hit the mailbox.
Right, that's another one that I want to do is,
Right.
you know, socialists, we put the social into Social Security, you know?
Yeah, very good, very good.
It's very true.
Yeah, there's still a big segment of society that sees the word socialism and uses it as a pejorative, and they've used it against the president for years now, and they're going to try to do the typical Republican election year tactic of trying to scare people, and they will use the word socialism to try to scare people. But Bernie Sanders is not going to have it, and he is very articulately pointed out that this is not the kind of socialism that the scaremongers are going to try to lay on the American voter.
Right.
He's pointed out to people that there's income inequality in this country, and I think a lot more people than you know are actually feeling that, and are actually,
Right.
if I can say, feeling the burn. Might still be a little bit concerned about his socialist, you know, tag, but you know, he's got it going on, and he's genuine. And in contrast to the Republican candidates, we've got two smart, articulate, fair candidates. They are not slinging mud at each other. They're being tough with each other.
They're being tough with each other,
they're
certainly.
not slinging mud.
But look at our debates, and look at that last Republican debate. Frank Luntz, the pollster extraordinaire on the Republican side,
Yep.
tweeted during that debate, "I am watching the Republican Party commit suicide tonight." And it was. They were screaming at each other and pointing fingers and you know, look at our debates. Our debates are about real substantive policy.
Yeah.
These guys just can't stop calling each other names and pointing fingers at each other.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous.
And
the
it's not
comparison.
just Donald Trump. I mean,
No,
he's
no.
definitely got the ball rolling, I think, as far as bringing everyone down early.
Right, right.
But these other guys are going at it pretty well.
Yeah,
So
he lowered that common denominator, and it's sinking.
Yeah.
It seems. Yeah. So it really is kind of crazy over on that other side of the aisle. Another point in national politics that I wear with pride is the work that I did on Elizabeth Warren's campaign. I couldn't be prouder of her as my senator in the Senate. She is absolutely wonderful. I really admire Elizabeth Warren, and you know, I'm glad that she represents me, and I'm glad that I worked on her campaign and got her in there.
well, you should be proud, John, and I'm proud of you for helping her. One of the things I'm most proud of with her is she basically invented, and correct me if I get this wrong, but the Consumer Protection Agency, this is the brand new agency.
The CPFB, or the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Right.
Yeah.
And this protects homeowners from, you know, shoddy mortgages and credit card ripoffs and
Right.
things like that.
Yep.
She basically invented that agency, but she was unable to head it for political reasons.
Right.
But she landed on her feet.
Right. She sure did.
And now she's
Yeah.
ours, and I'd like for that to
Yeah,
stay.
remain true for a long time to come. Yeah.
Talk about Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren makes bankers quake in their boots.
She does. She does.
And she's not taking a back seat to anyone when it comes to, you know, trying to protect the American people
Yeah.
from, you know, financial ripoffs.
Right. Well, I saw her in a hearing a while back where she was talking with one of the bankers. I forget which bank it was, but they were guilty of money laundering, and they paid a large fine for having laundered money for drug cartels. And she just basically called them on the carpet, and she said, you know, if a 19-year-old in some city in Massachusetts got caught with a large quantity of drugs, he'd go away for the rest of his life to jail. Why aren't you guys in jail? You're enabling these drug cartels to sell massive quantities of drugs. Why aren't you in jail? Why haven't you been put in jail? And she really called them on the carpet. And she called the Justice Department on the carpet about it, too, because they do belong in jail to a certain extent.
She called the Justice Department on the carpet when she said that these banks or whatever institutions are too big to try.
Right.
Because none of them would have been taken to trial
Right.
for these basically crimes.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got, seniors and other folks out there who practically have their savings, wiped out.
Right.
Now, I don't know if they've recouped those since the economy has turned around, but at the time, it was devastating to these people.
Even worse than that, Kevin, I've seen recently, in my job, I have several jobs. I sell solar power systems, which a lot of my viewers know about, but I also have a job where I do some customer service. And on that job, I had a customer come in, and he wanted to pay his bill with a credit card that he got, or a debit card. It's a cash debit card that he got from the government, where they deposit his VA check, his veteran's check. Okay, so he's on a pension from having served his country in a war. So he gets a check from the VA. And the way that this card worked, even though it was a debit card, and even though it had the MasterCard logo on it, it wouldn't run through my credit card system. Okay, and for some reason, it just did not approve. It kept on being declined. So he called the bank and he asked them what's going on, and they said, well, you have to put it through as just a debit card. Well, my system didn't differentiate, and so it turned out that he had to go to the bank and get cash in order to pay his bill. Okay, his bill was $210. His card limited him to withdrawals of $200 at a time. The bank where the money was being held charged him a $3 service fee anytime he took money out. The bank that was where the ATM was located charged another $3, and he was limited to $200. It cost him $12 to get $210 of his own money. It's disgusting. I can't remember the name on the card, but I do want to talk to Senator Warren about it the next time I see it. It's a terrible, it's egregious that they would do that to a veteran.
Right.
And they do the same thing to seniors with their Social Security checks. They give them these debit cards. Instead of sending them a check, they load up the money onto the debit card. But the debit card is practically useless. And I don't know who made the campaign contribution that got them that contract, but somebody sure did. And that's the kind of thing that the CPFB should be taking care of.
And you can go to their website and you can file a complaint right there.
Right.
And they're very interested in working for people that have complaints against us.
Since that time, I've seen several customers with the same issue, and I've told all of them, call your congressman. I even being as knowledgeable as I am of local politics, I can tell them who their congressman is. So, because not everybody in the country knows who their congressman is, which is really kind of a sad state of affairs that we face.
Right.
A lot of people in the country can't tell you who their senator is or who their congressman is, or certainly not their state rep or their state senator. That's
yeah, and you don't have to be a political geek to know those things. People should know who those people are.
Right, and how to approach them and how to get something done.
Exactly, they're working for us, and we have an obligation, I think, to know who they are and how to get in touch with them.
Right.
So.
Right. So let's move on a little bit. Joe Kennedy is our rep, both here in Milford and in Bellingham. What do you think of Joe's tenure so far?
Well, Joe's getting to the close of his second term, and I think most people would agree that just by dint of his name, that his seat may be safe for
for quite some time.
For quite some time.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Joe is really taking his job seriously, though. I don't think he is quite willing to go out and take big risks just based on the fact that he's a Kennedy in a safe seat. I think he's trying to build relationships in Congress where he knows he needs to reach across the aisle to get some support if he really wants to get things done. And I think he's being very deliberate right now. I think over the next couple of years, I think you're going to see Joe step out a little bit more and be a little bit more forceful as he gets more comfortable. Just because he's a Kennedy doesn't mean he knows all about everything in government. He still needs to earn his stripes there, and I think he realizes that. I'm glad to have him as my congressman, and I'm proud to support him in his next campaign. So.
Yeah, I do enjoy being represented in Congress by a Kennedy. I like that. My parents were big fans of John Kennedy. One of my earliest memories was the assassination of John Kennedy. I was 5 years old. And I remember being sent home from school, and when I got home, my mother was crying. And my mother never cries, so that was us kids. That was we were the ones who cried. Mom never cried, and that was really kind of traumatic for me. And I do remember the death of Kennedy. There's 7 kids in the family, right? Myself and my youngest sister were the ones who stayed behind. They took the other 5 kids and went to Washington, D.C. They left us with the neighbors for a couple of days.
Is that right?
And they went to Washington, D.C. with the other 5 kids for the funeral. They helped to line the streets for the parade route where they carried Kennedy's body and with the flag draped coffin and all that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they actually were in D.C. For that, and they got pictures and stuff. But yeah, my sister and I were too little, 5 and 3. We couldn't make that trip.
Right.
But
That's amazing. I mean, some
yeah.
people have a hard time taking 2 kids to the supermarket. I mean,
Right.
5 kids to
Five
D.C.
kids to D.C. in the station wagon.
in the cold. And,
Yeah.
wow, that's dedication and,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
loyalty, sure.
To this day, she's got a picture of John Kennedy on her nightstand.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, they were. My dad and my mom were both FDR Democrats. They lived through the Depression, and they were tremendously proud of Kennedy, and so sad when he died.
Yeah.
So you know, a life full of promise cut short
Right.
by an assassin's bullet. So
Yeah, I grew up in the Kennedy house as well, and that's where I get my interest in politics today, I think, is from my parents. I remember going canvassing with my dad when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I remember getting, you know, actively interested in the presidential campaign of Robert Kennedy.
okay.
So now I was 7 years old when he was assassinated, so that was rather traumatic for
Right,
me at that
right,
time too.
right.
But you don't see too many 7-year-olds following a presidential campaign either.
Right. But I was 10 years old when he was assassinated. So yeah, same thing. And I remember that vividly because,
Right.
of course, I was a lot older, and at that point, you know, I remember all that stuff.
And it's times like that, I think, where you feel like, okay, now we have to work even harder
Right.
for those goals to be achieved. And I think that's one thing that a lot of Democratic activists have in common is we actually believe that the work that we do is furthering the party, which is furthering, you know, accomplishments for the country.
Sure.
Because-
That's basically the difference between the parties right there. Democrats believe that the government can and should be a force for good in people's lives, whereas Republicans feel like the government gets in the way. All these job-killing regulations, and how many jobs has Obamacare killed? Well, actually, none. You know, the job creation has been fantastic under Obama. Compare the job creation numbers today to the job creation numbers for George W. Bush. Dwarfed. Absolutely dwarfed. Democrats are excellent stewards of the economy. One of the graphics that I've put on my show several times shows how over the last, since Hoover, all right, let's compare apples to apples since Hoover, Republicans to Democrats, with a $10,000 hypothetical investment in the S&P 500. Okay, now obviously the S&P 500 didn't exist in Hoover's time, but we can still theorize what it would have looked like back in that time. $10,000 invested under Republican administrations for that period of time, where they're roughly equal in I think it's like 44 years apiece or something along those lines. $10,000 invested would grow to $55,000. Under Democratic administrations, that $10,000 would grow to $650,000. The Democrats are better stewards of the economy. Anybody who says that he votes Republican because they're business friendly is sadly mistaken and is voting against their own best interest because they are not business friendly. The recessions and depressions that occur under Republican policies are legendary. Look at what happened at the end of the Bush administration. Look at what happened with Reagan and Bush 1, with the S&L crisis and all the other crazy things that they did to the economy back then. The S&L crisis was the most expensive thing since the Vietnam War. And basically that was deregulation that brought us that. You know, same thing with the Bush administration and the crash that happened in 2008. It was brought to us by deregulation of the banking industry. You know, they say we need to get the government out of the way. No, we don't. We need the government there as a cop on the beat to make sure that everybody's being treated fairly and that the economy works for everybody. That's Bernie's point. Bernie Sanders is saying we're in a rigged economy. And we need to rework it so that it works for everybody. That's one of the reasons. I am in the tank for Bernie Sanders. You know, if Hillary wins the nomination, I'll be voting for her. The Supreme Court is way too important to not have a Democrat as the next president, to my mind. But I'm really seriously in the tank for Bernie Sanders. I was phone banking for him yesterday. So
Okay. Well, I think, you know, it's pretty well proven that the economy does better when there's a Democrat in the White House. And I don't know where this notion got started. It must have been back in the 40s or something that the Republicans were better with money. Then maybe they're better with their own money. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what it is. But you know, John Kennedy was the one that slashed taxes from what 90% down to
70 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Bill Clinton over 8 years, and now Barack Obama over 8 years have shown consistently that Democrats do better with managing the economy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, I think that's
And Obama, especially in the face of Republican opposition on everything he wanted to do, has managed still to resurrect the economy, bring us back from the brink of the worst disaster since the Great Depression.
Right.
You know, and it's ludicrous to me. And speaking of Obama and Republican obstruction, Nino Scalia passed away over the weekend. So now, shocking, very shocking. I never expected Scalia to go first. I'm not sure if it's Scalia or Scalia. I think it's Scalia. I've heard
believe
most people.
it's Scalia.
Yeah,
but
I never
you
expected.
can call him Nino, I guess.
Nino,
that's a very cool name. I didn't know that they called.
Oh yeah.
I guess Ruth Bader Ginsburg and him were buddies. And
Yes,
they
yeah.
hung out at the opera and
Yeah, they were good
did other
friends.
things,
In
so.
fact, there's an opera about their relationship.
Oh, okay.
About Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Nino Scalia. I heard that on NPR the other day. I think I have to start listening to the opera because that sounds like a whole lot of fun. But yeah, so he's passed away, which nobody expected to happen. I certainly didn't expect Obama to get to name a Supreme Court justice.
Right.
But by the powers enumerated in the Constitution, the people spoke in 2012 and elected Obama. Obama has the right to name a successor. He's going to name one. Whether the Senate confirms his nominee is right now an open question.
Yeah, well, they're playing with fire again. Mitch McConnell, when he took control of the Senate back in 2010, was asked, what's your number one priority? What did he say? I want the president to be a one-term president.
Right.
How did that turn out for you, Mr. McConnell?
Didn't turn out so well.
Didn't turn out so well, and you look like an obstructionist all the way down the road. Obama gets reelected. An hour, two maybe, after Justice Scalia dies, does Mitch McConnell say, you know, we're very sorry, best wishes to the family, our prayers, our thoughts are with, no. He comes out and says, if the president tries to appoint a replacement, it's, you know, it's dead on arrival.
Right.
That's what he's thinking.
Right.
And that's another difference. The Republicans just seem to not be thinking about what's best for the country, but what's best for their party.
Right.
Because that was not the time to make that statement. Even if he made it the next day, he's still going to live to regret making that statement.
Yeah.
That was a sweeping challenge. He's going to alienate a lot of independent voters that are going to watch this play out now this year. They're going to watch the Republicans obstruct the president for no good reason except that they just don't want to give Obama his Supreme Court.
And the
nominee.
nightmare that is going to happen with Supreme Court decisions coming back tied 4-4, the legal morass that is going to create is ludicrous on its face. What happens there is if the Supreme Court comes back with a decision that's a 4-4 tie, the lower court ruling will stand. Whatever appellate court had decided, that ruling will stand.
Right.
But that ruling will not be precedential. It can't be used as precedent anywhere because it wasn't decided by the Supreme Court. And that decision will only stand in the jurisdiction covered by that particular appellate court. So there's how many appellate courts across the country? 12 or 20, or I'm not sure how many. There's quite a few.
I'm not sure.
There's quite a few districts.
I thought there were 9, but I'm
9 maybe. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly how many there are. That's certainly that's a little bit of research I should have done before the show, I suppose.
Yeah, it's amazing. The people that have gridlocked Congress are now trying to gridlock the Supreme Court.
The court. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I think that even Republican voters are going to start feeling, you know, maybe a little bit ashamed of what their party is doing in Washington these days.
If they had any shame, perhaps they'd feel some. But I haven't seen evidence of any shame. I saw my brother is a right winger. He follows Rush Limbaugh. You know, I feel like sending Rush a letter saying I want my brother back. But he put up something on his Facebook feed the other day talking about something that Chuck Schumer said towards the end of Bush's administration.
Right.
Mr. Schumer had said that if Bush were to nominate somebody outside the mainstream, that he'd have no problem voting against him. My brother and all the right-wingers who commented on the picture basically took those words to mean, well, Schumer was saying exactly the same thing as McConnell is saying, and he didn't. McConnell said, it doesn't matter who you nominate. The nomination is dead on arrival. We're going to wait for the next president because we think the people should have a chance to speak.
Right.
To my mind, the people spoke. 2012, they spoke. They elected Obama. It's his power to nominate Supreme Court justices. The Supreme Court justice has died. Sorry.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
that's
it's
the way it goes.
It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Which is surprising too, because conservatives usually like the black and white version of anything.
Right.
And that's what this is. And
Well, they also claim to revere and adore the Constitution as if it's the highest principles in the world, but apparently they're not really sure what it says.
Right.
Because you look at things like the president gets to appoint and the Senate has the role of advice and consent. It's spelled out there, folks.
Right.
It doesn't say that the president gets to appoint unless he's in the last year of his term, or unless he's black, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But there you have it. Somebody joked on Twitter that perhaps they're thinking the first black president should only have 3/5 of a term. Right.
Clever.
And Scalia, to his everlasting detriment in my eyes, he called himself a strict constructionist of how the Constitution should be interpreted.
It's a dead document.
Yeah, as a dead document, it has to be interpreted from the standpoint of the people who wrote it. To my mind, the Constitution shows the wisdom of the people that wrote it. They gave us the amendment process. They knew that it was a living document that would govern us, and it has governed us so successfully.
And that's why they left slavery out of it, because they knew at the time they couldn't pass it.
Right.
And so they said, okay, this is going to have to be for a future generation to handle.
Right. We're going to punt.
It gave us the Civil War, but I guess it had to.
It had to, yeah.
But they were thinking that this was a living document that was going to have to be, handled by someone down the road.
Right.
And
Yeah. And then that's when black people were given full personhood, in the Civil War. And it's really, it's ridiculous on its face, but they're hypocrites about it. The strict constructionists of the Constitution, unless it does something that they don't like.
Right.
So.
Strict constructionists, but they won't read the first clause of the Second Amendment.
Yeah, exactly, yes. Yeah, exactly. A well-regulated militia being essential to the nature of a free state.
Right.
Yeah, well-regulated.
Forget
The well-regulated part, who needs a regulation?
Yeah.
Another thing that I loved when the Republicans retook the House of Representatives, their first official act was to read the Constitution into the congressional record. It would cause me to comment on one of my blogs over at probably dailycoast.com. I commented to say, what are they going to do when they get to Article 6? Article 6 is the one that says there will be no religious test for public office, and also that any treaties signed by the President and ratified by the Senate become part of the Constitution and the supreme law of the land. They hate international law. They think international law is somehow, we're letting foreigners run our country.
Right.
And so,
Well, it's a vast conspiracy for us to join a world government that's going to be run by Russia.
It's going to be run by the Illuminati and Russia and everybody else. Yeah. That's another thing too. Recently on my brother's Facebook feed, I found something about how the UN police force was going to be taking over all of our cities, and he hopes that that when the UN takes over our cities, that they'll at least respect our Constitution. And so I posted very simply to that one to say, reality misses you. And I asked him what is going on here, and he posted a link to Breitbart News or somebody where it turns out what was going on is the UN has this Secure Cities initiative in which cities can share data on best practices for dealing with terrorist threats or violence or whatever. They can share best practices and share information. That, in Breitbart News speak, is the one world government and Agenda 21 coming to take over the United States. I posted back the entire text of the actual Department of Justice release about this whole program. All he said in response was, well, that just confirms my suspicions. So, I'm unaware of any way to rationally deal with people that are so disconnected from reality.
Yeah, and it's like trying to blow out a light bulb. And that's giving them a lot of credit, I think. But I think there are also a lot of of fair-minded and moderate Republicans out there. I happen to know some of them. My sense from them is they're a little embarrassed, and some of them have voted Democrat in the past, and hope they'll vote again in the future. But I think it's the independents that are going to be the key to this. Maybe not the key, but you have to court independents to be elected, especially the Republicans, because they're outnumbered.
Right.
And when they behave this way, they are not going to get the independent voter. At least the informed, intelligent ones. You know.
Everything that's going on in the debates right now, the television commercials for whichever Democrat wins the nomination, the television commercials are already written. I could write them all, just using clips of everything that they've said in the debates so far.
That's right.
It's tremendous. I don't know if you ever watched Samantha Bee's program, Samantha Bee.
I have not watched it yet. She just started, was it last week?
Last week or a couple of weeks ago, she started it.
And, I enjoyed her on The Daily Show often, so
she was tremendous. She actually, after the last debate with Trump saying all that stuff about how 9/11 happened on George Bush's watch, and there were no weapons of mass destruction, and we were lied to go to war, and all the things that he was yelling at everybody about and getting booed by the crowd, etc. She ended up in a catatonic state on her set saying, "No, I agree with Donald Trump."
Yeah.
And I think what was really most frightening to her was she likes to make fun of Donald Trump, and when suddenly Trump is saying things that actually make sense in the real world, this is she's losing her number one comedic muse,
right.
if you will.
It's funny with that particular thing. I saw him say that too, and I was thinking to myself, well, technically, he's right.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened on Bush's watch. I wouldn't say it's Bush's fault, but it did happen on his watch. And then he went on to say, that's like one team scoring 19 runs in the first inning, but we shut him out the rest of the game.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, Trump actually made a point there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's.
My brother kept us safe. Well, except that one time.
Yeah.
And I mean, he did ignore vital intelligence. On August 6th of 2001, he was given a presidential daily brief titled, "Bin Laden Determined to Attack in the United States."
Right.
It mentioned hijackings. They did nothing. They did nothing about that until 9/11 happened. Richard Clark was raising the alarm the whole way through, all year long, trying to get cabinet-level meetings to discuss what was going on and the chatter that was happening. They ignored it. It was really egregious on their part, and so I do blame Bush very heavily for 9/11, for letting that happen. Whether we let it happen on purpose or let it happen by mistake, I think he let it happen. And
Yeah, I would mostly lean to the side that says he didn't really know any better at that time.
Yeah.
And it took him a long time to realize that Dick Cheney was leading him down the wrong path. Although that was like year 7 by the time he understood that was happening.
Right.
And Rumsfeld.
Right. A good friend of mine says, he's not a partisan Democrat like I am. He's more independent-minded, and but he voted for Obama because he knows which side his bread is buttered on. He's a businessman. He said about Bush, he said, when I'm in a room with the president, he says, I want to know that the president is the smartest person in the room. He says, I couldn't feel that way about George W. Bush. People talked about how Obama, he's an elitist. He's he wants to be better than me. He's an elitist and all that stuff. Jon Stewart put it best. He said, look, this is a job where if you're really good at it, someone will carve your face into the side of a mountain. I want someone who's embarrassingly superior to me to be doing that job. And it's really true. This is a very important job. This is not, it's almost like the Republicans treat winning the White House like a sporting event.
Exactly.
Like, my team won, yay, we won. That's when the work starts, is when you win. And that's something that they don't seem to realize and they don't seem to get. So let's see, what else can we talk about? We talked about McConnell. Let's talk a little bit more about Donald Trump. I love talking about Trump, and I love the things that I think he's going to destroy the Republican Party, which it'd be a good thing, I think, if they get kept in the wilderness for a while. They're barely managing to hold on to the Senate right now, and I really do think that the Senate's going to flip this year. We talked a little bit about, McConnell doesn't want to hold confirmation hearings. Some of his senators, they've got a lot of seats to defend this year in 2016. The 2010 election was a wave year for Republicans. They brought in a lot of freshman senators then. They won a lot of seats in 2010, meaning they have a lot of seats to defend this year. Some of those senators, like Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire, she has a strong opponent in Maggie Hassan. Mark Kirk in Illinois has a strong opponent in Tammy Duckworth, and he's also in the unenviable position of having a Tea Party guy primarying him. So he's really trying to straddle the fence as far as the Supreme Court nominee battle is going on. We also have Ron Johnson out in Wisconsin with Russ Feingold running against him.
Right.
So
Russ Feingold, very fine senator from Wisconsin.
Yep.
First elected, I think, back in the early 90s.
yes,
I think he served 2 terms and then was unfortunately defeated.
right,
But glad to hear he's back. And now Mitch McConnell, in his effort to try to bully the president to not sending any nomination names, he's actually put these senators in a box.
right.
He could have said nothing at all. It may have still turned out to be a campaign issue, but not right now.
Right.
It's February.
Right.
And already these people are feeling the pressure. And that's because Mitch McConnell, I think, is severely lacking in political skills, especially as a majority leader.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really put these people on the spot. So if he loses his majority seat, then he certainly deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Chuck Schumer would be the logical choice for Democratic majority leader.
I disagree.
Really?
I think Dick Durbin has done the heavy lifting for a long time. I don't know how Schumer hopped over Dick Durbin. Maybe you can explain that to me. I know he's taller and he's like everything else.
A little
but
more nimble.
I know overall he may have been in Congress longer than Dick Durbin, but Dick Durbin's been a senator much longer than Schumer.
I know that Schumer has never lost an election. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I'm not aware of that.
I met him once back in the was it the 2006 cycle. I met him. We had a organization going here in Massachusetts that we called Secure Our Senate Majority, the SOS Majority Project. And we held fundraisers for, because here in Massachusetts we have really a wealth of Democrats, and we send Democrats reliably to the Senate every year. So what we did was we held fundraisers here in Massachusetts for various candidates from across the country. We had Al Franken come in, we had Chuck Schumer came in, we had Kay Hagan from North Carolina came in. We had a lot of folks who came in to the state and attended fundraisers with us. And so, yeah, I met him then, and that's one of the things that he said that night when he was, just giving a brief bio of himself. He's never lost an election. Anything he ever ran for, he won. So it's quite a record there. I really don't know how he would have leapfrogged Dick Durbin for majority leader, unless perhaps Durbin doesn't want it. I really don't know what happened there.
I don't know. And I would be fine with Chuck Schumer being majority leader. I just always thought that Dick Durbin was carrying water for quite a long time there and deserved it. So.
Well, what a lot of people are saying is that Schumer should, at this point, just put it on the line for McConnell, that if you block this nominee and the Democrats take control of the Senate next year, we're going to pull the trigger on the nuclear option and eliminate the filibuster for any judicial nominee, Supreme Court included.
Yeah, it's too bad that these things keep getting ratcheted up.
Right.
It really is unfortunate. But when you say things like Mitch McConnell says without thinking, and has the gall to say that the American people deserve a chance to decide who the next Supreme Court nominees. He doesn't speak for the American people, number one.
Right.
And number two, the American people have spoken. They spoke in 2012, as you said. They elected a president who they knew was going to nominate a certain brand of justice for that court.
Yeah.
He won the election. He won it handily. He still is the president, and he has every right and obligation to put a nominee to the
He's
Senate.
obligated
And the Senate has an obligation and a responsibility to vote that person up or down, whatever they want to do.
Right.
But
in a fair and equitable and timely manner. Right. That's what's most important.
I just wish I knew what the penalty was if the Senate decided not to accept their responsibility. I mean, do we have Senate prison? I don't know.
Well, you look at McConnell's statement that he made in when Obama got elected in 2008. That he wants this president to fail. He wants him to limit him to a one-term. We were at war. We were at war on two fronts, And what's his most important obligation, or what's his most important objective for the next 4 years, is to undermine this president? That's almost treason, isn't it? I mean, you got to look at this stuff in the light of day with some kind of realism, and the stuff that he's done, like you say, it shows a serious lack of political savvy or political skill.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Or he's a genius. I don't know.
Let's talk a little bit about the other Republicans that are running. We have about 6 or 7 minutes left, so we have a little bit of time. I want to get back to the DSC and why you're running for the DSC, but let's take just a couple of minutes and talk about Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and George Bush, or Jeb Bush, that is, especially. Jeb is one of my favorite characters in the world, basically because his name is not Jeb. His name is John, which is my name.
That's right.
John Ellis Bush.
Right.
And so they call him by his initials to give him some kind of a folksy Southern appeal, which I think is really disingenuous, if not just an outright lie.
Yes, John is much too cerebral.
Apparently,
You know, we can't have this John.
Right.
That's,
Well, I suppose they call him Jeb, and that's how he got himself dumbed down. I mean, everybody thought he was the smarter brother, but I don't see him being very smart in this campaign.
I thought he was a smarter brother, too, until he started talking.
Right, until he opened his mouth. One of the things that Sam B had on her show was he was at some kind of a town hall, and he gave what he thought would be an applause line to the assembled crowd. And he paused for the applause line, or for the applause to take place, and nobody clapped.
Right.
And he actually said, "Please clap." And they cut back to Sam B, and she says, "Tinkerbell is dying. Please clap, everybody." Oh, it was hilarious. And yeah, you're right. I mean, he's really, apparently his vote total in New Hampshire, with the money that he spent in New Hampshire, came out to $1,200 per vote.
Yes, I thought he was up to somewhere between 50 and 60 by the time, million.
Yeah.
Spent by the time New Hampshire was over, between New Hampshire and Iowa. But I don't know. I don't know about all of his policies when he was governor. I mean, he seems like a decent guy, but he doesn't have the it or something. I don't know what it is for him.
Michael Shivo would disagree with you on whether or not he was a decent guy.
Yeah.
And his Right to Rise PAC actually had the gall to run an ad in South Carolina showing an image of Terry Shivo.
Oh.
Which, if I were Michael Shivo, I would sue them for every penny that they have.
Okay.
I would sue them for every single penny that they have. The crap that they put that family through at that time when Terry was clearly dead.
Right.
She was clearly brain dead.
And you had politicians looking at her on videotape saying, "Yeah,
She seems alert.
yeah."
Yeah. That was disgusting, that whole display.
Well, you can edit out the part where I said he was a decent guy.
Post-production.
When you compare him to some of the other guys, I mean, if
Yeah.
Ted Cruz ever wins the nomination, I would love to see how he pivots to the middle to try to win the general, because some of the things he's said and done, the thing with telling Iowa voters that
Ben Carson was
Ben
dropping
Carson
out.
was dropping out.
Yeah.
The mailer he sent out to
Yeah.
Iowa voters saying, "This is how your neighbors vote, and here's your grade
Yeah.
with how you voted." Get
Voting
out there."
violation. Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a whole lot of scruples, and he's quite radical.
Well, he reminds me, both physically and from tactically, he reminds me of McCarthy, of Joe McCarthy. He looks like Joe McCarthy. There's a resemblance there, and his tactics are very much like McCarthy's.
Yeah.
With
It's scorched earth kind of thing, and, or glowing sand, whichever pick your metaphor. But another thing, this is where Trump says something that I say, my God, I think he might be right. If Ted Cruz believes his own, thing about the Constitution, then he has to rule himself out of being president, because the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, meant born on the soil.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I don't think it should mean that. I think we should probably change that. We're long past the time we're worried about somebody being loyal to a king across the sea.
Right.
But, Ted Cruz says he's a strict constructionalist when it comes to the Constitution, but the guy was born in Canada.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Dual citizenship. He had dual citizenship for both countries for years. He only recently gave it up.
I know.
Yeah. And what you said earlier about him with the scorched earth and the carpet bombing and everything else that he wants to do, how many innocent people, how many women and children would he kill if he made the sand glow over there? Yet he calls himself a Christian. Carpet bombing is something that was tried in World War II, and guess what? It didn't work. Then he tried to explain that what he meant by carpet bombing was what we did to Iraq. Well, what we did in Iraq was targeted bombing.
It was surgical.
Smart bombs.
Right.
Yeah. It wasn't carpet bombing.
I think Nixon tried it in Laos.
Yeah, Laos and Cambodia. Yeah, but they dropped. Well, they were just dropping a lot of leftover ordnance from World War II.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a tactic that works with any. It doesn't change any hearts or minds. It makes people dig in harder.
So Rubio, I think I've always thought he's kind of a lightweight. However, I mean, I got to give the guy his due. He's still in the race. He still has support. But he, the thing with him is the robotic tag really has some legitimacy to it.
Right.
I mean, I've heard so many times, his staff has trained him to do this and to do that. I'm like, sounds like Reagan.
Well, he also had a strategy of 3-2-1. He'd finish third in Iowa and second in New Hampshire and then first in South Carolina. That was his strategy. Now he's looking at 3-5-3. Which is not quite the strategy that he wants to really go for. So it's going to be interesting to see how much longer they all stay in the race. Bush certainly has the money to stay in the race, but whether or not he has the the wherewithal to continue to lose like that, it's going to be interesting.
And now
to see.
John Kasich has decided he's going to be a nice guy now, and he's playing the role very well. He may actually be a nice guy. I don't know, but I don't remember him being a very nice guy when he was a congressman, and I don't think he was a very nice guy for most of the time he was governor of Ohio.
Right, a lot of people in Ohio say that he won't even carry Ohio. People in Pennsylvania hate him.
So now he's developed this, I love all you people kind of thing, and it's kind of nice. It's a positive spin to the campaign, but I don't know if that's going to work in South Carolina.
Right.
But if he's coming across as the most sane guy, on the ticket, he might, pull it off. I don't know.
So it looks like we are actually out of time. And didn't I tell you earlier that an hour goes by faster than you might think?
Yes, you did.
We are actually
like Game of Thrones. I can't believe it's over.
We are actually out of time. You've been watching All Politics is Local. My guest tonight was Kevin Tagliaferri. He's running for the Democratic State Committee, so he'll be on your ballot here in the Worcester-Norfolk Senate District. By all means, vote for Kevin for Democratic State Committee on March 1st. And if you're in Bellingham, vote for Kevin for the Bellingham Democratic Town Committee as well. I'm John Tian. I'm your host of All Politics is Local. All Politics is Local is a production of the Greater Blackstone Valley Dems. For more information about the GBV Dems, visit our website at www.gbvdems.org. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, everybody.